doing interesting things. So today, we are privileged to have Mawuli Gavor. Mawuli is well known by, I think, lots of us on here if you watch any African movies. He is an actor from Ghana who is very well known for his work in Nollywood right now. Definitely one of the young up-and-comers. I don't know if any of you just saw the latest cover of Emmy Africa, but he featured there alongside other young African up-and-comers. And we're just so thankful that he made the time. He said he's actually on set to just come and talk to us and have a conversation about what the cinema landscape looks like in Africa and how the stories that are being told can actually serve as a vehicle for change, and especially just changing the narratives that have been cast about Africa. So Mawuli, I'm just gonna ask you to come in and put on your video. I know the ladies are looking out for you.
Put on which one? What's that?
Oh, you just put
What's
on
happening?
Please put on your
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Hi guys, how's it going? I have to apologize. I've lost my voice, so I'm actually in. You're gonna have to deal with a bit of a strange voice today. Yeah. But hopefully we'll manage and we'll push it through. I'm actually trying to nurse it for tomorrow.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not in the best place, so we're gonna have to just thug it out today. But it's good to be here, Debbie. Congratulations on putting it together. It sounds like a pretty interesting forum. So what are we talking about today?
So we're basically talking about how cinema contributes to basically just retelling narratives about Africa, right? So we've had so many negative stereotypes over the years that have really just casted negative lights on the continent. And it's really interesting to see what young storytellers are doing in film in changing some of these narratives. And we're just kind of curious from the perspective of you, obviously an actor who is coming in the industry, and your perspective and what you bring to the screen, and what impact you think it's making.
Well, the thing is, I think fortunately we're at a period where everything African is making waves. It's not just cinema, it's pretty much everything. Our art, our music, and then now obviously our media as well. So we're in a pretty interesting period when it comes to Africa and the good things that we're doing. And I think everyone is starting to see it in the results that are happening, because you see there's a bunch of young people, there's a bunch, not necessarily young, but there's a bunch of people doing some pretty incredible things in the media space, not just in Africa, like in the diaspora, wherever. And you're starting to see it. So it's not just, back then we would only see it, say, on our local televisions or something, but now we see it everywhere. It doesn't really matter, on YouTube, on HBO, on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on it doesn't matter the platform, as long as the content is good enough. Now we're starting to see it out there being represented. So at least we have a seat at the table, and now it's up to us to just, I guess, continue to use that platform to push the agenda that we think is worthy. As to what that agenda is, we're gonna have to decide that together. But yeah, it's an interesting time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you think this has shaped your craft, or what you kind of bring to the screen when you're in projects like these? I know you've worked with a lot of filmmakers who are basically kind of coming out of telling these, what we would frame as like typical stories, right? Oh, African in the village. Oh, this poor person who has come out of poverty into some sudden wealth. But people are telling new stories. People are telling stories that haven't been heard before. Even just normal things, the way people are growing up on this continent, telling stories from the perspective of young people in, like, whether it's Nigeria or Ghana. I mean, how is this shift impacting your work personally?
It's a very interesting question. But I actually like what you said about we're telling news stories, which is interesting. However, I think when we were younger, we used to think that, oh, the stories were a bit mundane or they're a bit like same. But all they were doing was reflecting the life that they knew, because the fact is that was their reality. Most of our parents moved from the village to the city, and that's how we ended up where we are. That's how we ended up going to school in all the best colleges and everything. But one generation behind us, that was the reality. You grew up in the village, a rich man will come with his car, talk to the village girl by the roadside. No. Yeah, it's obviously we were growing up, and because we couldn't relate to it, we assumed that it was just the same stories. But at the end of the day, stories can only reflect your reality, which is how, I mean, at the moment we have Hollywood, which is telling the same stories for the past 20 years. We've been telling the same stories in Hollywood because we only tell the stories that reflect the reality around us. So that being said, I think we should still tell those stories, the old ones and everything. We should just tell them better. The only thing that we did wrong in those days was that we didn't have the technical capability to tell those stories properly. So the easiest thing to do is just fast forward it and fast forward to when the prince goes to the roadside to fight against his dad for to marry the poor girl. So we were just fast forwarding and everything. It doesn't mean that story wasn't valid, or it doesn't mean that story wasn't because once again, those are our African stories. For us, yes, our African stories now involve TikTok and Instagram, but that's not necessarily the entire African story. Not everything involves Wall Street or social media. That's for us, the fortunate people who were able to enjoy that part. But if we're saying we're being true to telling the actual African story, the actual African story isn't stocks and bonds and thing. If we're talking about the average person. But that being said, the fact that we're able to choose what we want to do right now is the most important thing. To choose the stories that we want to tell. So if we want to tell the old story about the prince in the village, that's fine. We will tell it, and we will tell it properly. If we want to tell the story about how a young African rose to start the biggest tech company in the world, we will tell it, and we will tell it properly. But all in all, like I'm not even gonna lie. There's the one thing I'm always gonna say is, as long as you can see people putting in the effort, that's all that we can ever ask for. Hollywood is 200 and something years old. The African film industry is about 30 something years old. So it's an interesting time, and we see where we go from here.
What would you say about what basically led you to this career path? I mean, so for those who don't know, in the group, Mawuli and I went to high school together. And it's just been very interesting seeing your trajectory since then. I mean, it's been amazing. What do you think just brought you along this career path?
I guess just time and opportunity. If it's something that I happened to be doing at a particular time, and I chose to go with it, because I still had my regular job when I made the switch to entertainment. But ultimately, it served me better to be on this side and to do it fully, because at the end of the day, we can all make our positive efforts in one way or the other. And I was doing that in the financial world, but it wasn't that big of an impact. That in the industry that I am now, I'm able to make much more of an impact with what I do and who I am and the things that I can bring to the table. So it's a much more fulfilling life for me now than being in the office where I was before. So once that sort of took effect, and I was fortunate enough that my career went in the way that it did, so then it became pretty easy to stick with it. Obviously, it doesn't happen like that for everyone, so I can't really speak to that. But yeah, that's what happened. It's at the end of the day, everyone just wants to leave everything in a better position than they found it. So I believe this is something that I can also apply my efforts to. So here we are, and we see how we go.
That's amazing. I'm gonna actually open up to the audience so that you can ask your questions directly to Mawuli. So if you have a question, please just raise your hand or unmute, and and we will take the questions in that order. I see a hand from Natalie. You can go ahead and
Hi.
ask.
Okay. Hi, Mawuli.
Hi, Natalie. How are you?
Fine, thank you. The question I have is, how did your parents first react when you said you were leaving your, office job to go and act?
They react to the way every parent would, if I'm being honest, and if I'm being fair. It's not like I blame them for that reaction. Especially in the time that I made the decision, it wasn't necessarily things hadn't necessarily blown up like that. African films weren't on Netflix and all over the place. It wasn't actually.
Right.
Very few people saw where this was going. I happened to see where this was going, and I knew that it would be. I knew that it would work. I couldn't blame them for not seeing it. But now that they see where it is now, they obviously know that I made the right decision. So they were, I guess, confused, which is fair. But at the same time, I'm fortunate enough to have like parents who would allow me to do anything I wanted to do as long as I could just justify it. And the reality was, with my very first entertainment gig, I was making more in 1 year. I made that in 1 day, what I would have made in 1 year sitting in the office that I was leaving. So, I mean, and as much as my parents want you to be in a bank, they also like money. So I was like, Mom, Dad, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, I get it, and I can be an accountant. I can also. My 1 year salary in 1 day. So what do you say?
Right.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Mel.
Sorry, I had a call that was coming through.
Okay. Thank you, Natalie, for that question. I think a lot of us go through this in kind of questioning the path that we really need to take, especially being apprehensive about how our parents are going to react. So I think that's very relatable. Does anyone else want to ask a question? You can go ahead and unmute, or you can raise your hand. Kia, I think you had a question earlier.
Sure, Debbie, just put me on the spot. Yeah, so my name is Kia, and being from the States, I'm still learning a bit about Nollywood and Nollywood films. So do you see yourself, I guess, just being in front of the camera, or do you see yourself transitioning to maybe directing or producing, or just, I just wanted to ask.
Hi, Kia. How's it going?
Good.
So yeah, fortunately for me, because I didn't necessarily grow up, it's not like this was my plan growing up. So simply being in front of the camera and like being popular and everything, it's great and everything, but that's not necessarily what like fulfills me and everything. So I made the decision pretty early in my career to do a bit more than acting. So I actually started a production company about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago now. So we produce TV content for distribution on SVOD platforms, that's online platforms, networks, and then airlines. So we have about 2 films out. We're doing the 3rd one. We co-produced one, I believe, in Jamaica last year. So it's something that we've been trying to do for the last couple of years. So I try to do both. I do the films for other people, but at the same time, I also do create my own films. And I hope to be able to do more of that, but that's also honestly kind of tough. So for now, it's like 70-30. I do other films and then 30% of my own films.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you too.
That's very impressive. Actually, I have a question. How has COVID impacted the industry, especially in Ghana, Nigeria? What's that looking like now for actors and artists?
It's hard to explain because there's no COVID in Africa or in Ghana and Nigeria. If you ask our president, he will tell you bars and clubs will be closed. So I don't know what to tell you. No, the reality is most people are pretending, like, especially in Ghana and Nigeria, everyone's like misbehaving recent, like now. The fear that we started this whole campaign with everyone wearing masks and everything, it's not the same thing right now. Everyone is sort of just wishing it would go away. Schools are open, everything is open. So it's the same thing. We are all acknowledging that the problem is out there. So it depends on the production that you're working on. I would only work on a production that has tested everyone before we get on set and like adheres to the rules. The same way people would decide if they want to go to a church that doesn't socially distance or wear the mask, you know, like it's out there. So now it's just personal choices, that's all.
Okay, so with your production company, has that meant that you've had to make some hard choices?
Oh yeah. So everything for 2020 was obviously put on hold because we were supposed to go back to Jamaica to finish up some other projects, but with travel being out of the picture and everything for that side has been on hold. But once again, that's a cross-board. I think for most people, like 2020 was just one of those, let's see what next year is saying type of thing. So I don't think we were hit any harder than anyone else. We're still operating, just obviously with a different kind of care and with a different kind of restriction, I guess, if you can put it like that.
Okay. Any other questions for Mawuli? You can go ahead and raise your hand or unmute your mic. Ladies, don't be shy. Okay, I have another question actually. Mawuli, so looking forward, let me just say something for my country. We see Nollywood doing things, and I really wonder what's happening in Ghana with our industry. I know you obviously made the choice to work predominantly in Nigeria. What do you think can be done in Ghana to improve the filmscape?
It's always tough to answer this question because anyone who's from Ghana knows what Ghanaians are like. We are some of the most talented people out there. We're some of the most just gifted, but we're not necessarily always the most aggressive. We're not necessarily always the most, it's not even about hardworking, because that's not the way. We're definitely hardworking. We don't always get up and go get what we want. A lot of the time we use the nyamebeye, or we just say, oh, it's okay, God's gonna do it. Or we just say like, it's gonna be fine and everything. For good or for bad, say what you want about Nigerians, they will always go get what they want. And that became the point in African cinema. The reality is Ghanaians started proper African cinema before Nigerians. When we started doing proper, let me not say proper films, when we started investing heavily in cinema and like using like real cameras and like proper equipment and everything, Nigerians were still doing the other side of things. And we took the lead. However, we got a bit complacent because I guess we believed that we had done enough, and then we didn't support the people who were doing those things, because that's literally the only way any industry can survive. You have to be able to say, hey, listen, these people are putting in a bit of effort, let's go support them. We had some people in Ghana who started it, and I wouldn't say people really supported it. In Nigeria, however, when people did do something like that, when Moabudu decided to take a leap and make Wedding Party, she went and partnered with 5 other studios and invested a huge amount of money. It wasn't cheap to make that money, to make the first Wedding Party film. It wasn't cheap. Back then, nobody was spending that amount on films, nobody. But she took the risk and she said, hey, listen, this is what we want to do. So they shot it, amazing quality, and it ended up making $1 million+, you know, and obviously no one even knew that African cinema had the potential to do that. Now the highest grossing Nigerian film, it came out in a pandemic year. It came out this year. It's called Omogeto. It's made about over $1 million now. Wow. And it came out last month. It's made over $1 million, more than Wonder Woman, more than every other film that came out in a thing. So Nigerians saw the potential and they went for it. Hopefully Ghanaians will also see the potential and go for it, because the talent is there, the gifts are there. It's just same with our musicians and everything. If we can see that, hey, listen, we have this talent, we're going to put a bunch of money behind them, we're going to push these people out there, we're going to show that this is what we have to offer, we will also make a mark. So let's see when that day will come, and then we'll go. But to clarify, I actually didn't make the move to come to Nigeria by choice. I was working for DSTV, and DSTV doesn't have studios in Ghana, so it wasn't really an option. I had to come live in Nigeria.
I see. Okay. I think we have a question from Prempe. Prempe, would you like to ask, or shall I read out your question?
Please read it, if you don't mind. Yeah.
No, that's fine. So Prempe is asking, to what extent does contemporary cinema seek to contribute to social awakening that is relevant for the continent's socio-economic development?
Prempe, that's actually a pretty amazing question, and it goes back to the same thing. If people will support, then these things will happen. At the end of the day, filmmakers are human beings who are trying to make money for their wife and kids and their families and their children. Nobody wants to make a film that's going to cost them $200,000 and then they're going to make $5,000 back. It's not beneficial to anyone, which means that even if people have important messages that they want to get off, unless they feel it's going to be financially feasible, it's very unlikely that people will continue to take that risk. However, if we put the industry in a place where films were allowed to thrive, much like, yes, Hollywood has Avengers and everything, but it also has a thing where films like Get Out and other films that are trying to do a bit of a social commentary, those films can also survive. At the moment, we've made it very hard for those films to survive in the African industry. So the only people who can afford to do it are people who have, I wouldn't say unlimited money, but people who are willing to make a loss, because you will not make that money back. So the will is there. We want to tell those stories, the stories about NSARS or the things that Ghanaians are doing wrong, or all of those things. We want to tell those stories. It's not cheap, and people are still telling them in their own way with short films and everything. If, once again, this comes back to if we can actually put the systems and the industry in a place where people can actually thrive and make money, I guarantee you that you will see a lot of like stories being geared towards like social commentary or like advocating for change in whatever way that we can.
Actually, on that point, I mean, what sort of collaborative work can be done between different countries? I mean, we've mostly been talking about West Africa. We know that there's a lot of money in South Africa for filmmaking. I don't really know where East Africa is when it comes to their cinema and production. But I mean, what personally, what sort of collaborations do you see potential in for yourself and for the industry?
The collaborations are actually already happening, so it's a great thing, because Africans in general, we get along no matter where we're from, east, west, north, or south. For the most part, we all get along pretty well. So people are making the effort. I shot a film in Kenya last year, actually. It should be out soon. But it was fantastic. It was mainly a Kenyan film. I know they've had some Kenyan actors who come over here to do things as well. But once again, these things are kind of expensive, and they're kind of they're not necessarily always easy to do. But these are the stories that we want to tell, stories that don't involve just a Ghanaian cast or just a Nigerian cast, or just because look at where we are now. We have people who are Ghanaian or Nigerian or half American, half Ghanaian, half Egyptian, half whatever. So the more we can start to represent everyone who's available to be represented, the more we can start to actually tell the African story, not the Ghanaian story or not the Nigerian story. Because I think we're all trying to tell the African story, if I'm not mistaken. So it started, and we hope that it can continue. But let's all wish for the best.
I think Prempe has a follow-up.
Yes, thank you so much, Debbie. I mean, this is a follow-up to your response and also to my earlier question.
Okay.
One thing that is becoming quite obvious is the lack of satisfaction on the part of older actors and actresses. I mean, I'm talking about those who started acting maybe in the 70s and
Yes,
1990s.
yes, yes.
Now, in many cases, they tend to worry about what they prefer to refer to as authentic Ghanaian culture, authentic Nigerian culture, authentic African culture. And for many of them, they are worried that what we see on the screens do not reflect exactly what Africa is. So I don't know how, as a young man in the industry who is doing very well, how do you think of the idea of authentic African culture? Because even the stories we tell, many people tend to think that either the stories are overly romanticized or they've been adulterated in so-called American cultures. So I don't know how the contemporary industry is trying to engage that kind of conversation and how that is that is put into movies for us to watch. Thank you.
Got you. Charles, thanks a lot for that. So if you notice, Hollywood also this problem isn't limited to Africa. Every culture, everywhere they have this problem where one generation won't be able to relate to what the current generation is doing because they feel like it's not authentic enough. I'm sure in America people think that they're moving away from, with all the Transformers and all the new CGI and everything, people might feel that that's not authentic and everything. But the key is to be able to create content for every demographic, which is what Hollywood is able to do. They're able to make biopics about James Brown, or a film about the first woman to do, like it's CJ Walker, like they're able to offer content to every demographic. So there's going to be older people who will be able to appreciate, hey, listen, I remember. They'll be watching these things and can say, I can also appreciate that. The same way they make films like The Hangover for weed smokers, or they make films that have like gay people in it, or lesbians, or we need to be able to create content for everyone. In Africa, for instance, if we're able to get, say, the makeup education done properly, where we can start to either age people or de-age people, where we can start to tell stories of things that have gone past properly, then we get to sort of make everyone happy. Because the reality is, if we also told the stories that the older people want to tell, the young people will be like, I also don't know what this is going on. So nobody is going to be completely happy. But as long as we can try to make both sides happy, then yes.
It's a very nuanced look at it, Mawuli. Thank you.
Charles, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, my brother.
Thank you. These are really good questions. Does anyone else want to ask Mawuli any burning questions? Please raise your hand or unmute your mic. Feel free to ask. Demi, I think you had mentioned you had a question for Mawuli. Demi? Oh, okay. That's fine.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Cynthia. Thank you for joining us today, Mawuli. It's so great to hear from you. So my question is about piracy. So when I was much younger, that was a very big problem in Nollywood, in the industry. And I was just wondering, today, if that's still an issue or if it has become something else. Like, what's that like today?
Let me put it like this. The pirates won. So that's it. Piracy. So in terms of DVDs and everything, that's a thing of the past. Nobody can make money from that anymore, because by the time you even print your first 10 copies, they've already printed 10,000 copies of your film. So everyone just like washed their hands and just like, you know what? I give up. You guys just do what you want to do. So unfortunately, piracy was not something that we were able to get under control. So we sort of just let it happen. So now there's other platforms. You're making money from cinemas, from leasing to online platforms to like Netflix, HBO, Amazon Prime, Roku TV, or you lease to TV networks, DSTV, maybe even TV3, GH1, whoever. But yeah, piracy made it impossible to make money from CD sales.
Mm. Would you say for the majority of up-and-coming actors, they're able to sustain themselves on just salaries from the movies that they're making, or are people having to kind of work alongside, work a regular job alongside?
I think the misconception about acting is that it's a special. Acting is the same as every other job. There's always going to be, if there were 1,000 doctors, there's probably going to be 10 of them who are making $1 million. There's probably going to be 50 of them who are making somewhere in the middle, and the rest of them are probably going to be hustling. So ultimately, it's always going to depend on what range you fall into. There will always be actors who are doing super well and making a lot of money. There will always be a huge group of people who are hustling, and there will always be people who aren't making any money at all, just like pretty much any other job. So you have to see where destiny places you, and then you take it from there. That's honestly the reality of it, because one person's story won't be the same as you. Debbie, you're an artist, for instance. It's the same as the thing. Everyone is able to make some paintings and everything, but the reality is somebody can charge $1 million for their painting and he will get away with it. It doesn't mean that everyone can do it. Same with actors. I might be able to charge one thing and somebody else might not necessarily be able to get away with it. So you see where destiny places you, and then you take it from there.
Mm. Thanks for that, Molly. Anyone else? Nestle, you have another question? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so Malvi, I was just wondering if you ever had to turn down any roles because you were uncomfortable or it didn't fit either a mold or something that you're trying to fit into, or are you just open to doing any role that the company gives you?
Once again, my story is always a bit different, because I get to choose the roles that I do, because I don't necessarily have to. I don't have to do a film every year. I do maybe like 1 or 2 a year. So I'm a bit more fortunate because my business interests are a bit more diversified than doing just acting. So I'm fortunate enough to choose. The reality is not everyone necessarily has that choice. I'm sure even you would notice, even in, say, Hollywood, for instance, you see like a really popular actor, he's doing a bunch of films, and you're like, bro, how did you end up in this film? Listen, everybody has bills to pay. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be a point where you're going to have to choose between things that you might not necessarily be too happy with and things that you're going to do, because it is still a job and you still need to get paid. So yes, I get to choose the jobs that I do, but it doesn't mean that it's always easy or breezy or anything. So it's a fine line, and you try to brand, you try to do it, and then but my story is obviously a bit different. So it's hard for me to. I can only tell you what I personally have gone through, but I can't speak for the general industry or like other actors.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. I mean, Somali, where do you see yourself? I know people hate this question, but where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? What would you like to accomplish, both within the industry and without?
To be honest, it doesn't really matter for me. In 5 years, I might be a farmer. Not even kidding. So it's end of the day, I want to be able to leave a legacy that's in whatever field it is. It doesn't have to be acting. It doesn't have to be if it can be whatever it is. As long as I get to do something positive in one way or the other, I'll go for it. If in 2 years I find that I'm involved in an energy deal where I'm going to be able to build some electricity plants across Africa, I'll leave and I'll go do that. For now, this is where I can offer the most help, and I'm happy to stay where I am. If God being so good, it continues to go like this, we take it from there. But I think we've all seen from 2020 that also where will we see ourselves? I don't think that one is a relevant question again. We don't do that. We don't do that. We don't do that.
Oh, yeah, this is very true. I mean, I think a lot of us have had to reroute and replan our lives, and it's scary. And I think it's also very freeing, just kind of allowing ourselves to see what happens and take opportunities as they're given.
I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead, Daisy.
Thank you very much. So I'm Daisy, I'm from Kenya, and I'm just wondering, has the government actually provided proper support and enabling environment for the film industry to thrive, especially in West Africa, because like it really thrives very, very well. Even most of the movies I've watched on Netflix, which are African, they're from West Africa. The Wedding Party, Chief Daddy, name them, the list is endless. So talk about the government. What support does the government give, or are you always just taxed? Talk about it. Yeah.
I think I lost for a second. I'm back. Oh, okay. I lost you for a second.
Oh, Daisy.
What's that?
Did Daisy repeat her question?
Yeah, please. I actually didn't hear anything.
I was asking, I was asking whether the government, the enabling environment, does the government provide that, or are you always in and up and about, talk about how does the government support this industry?
Got you. What country are you from?
I'm from Kenya.
You're from Kenya?
Yes.
Do you know any African government that's sensible?
From my end, I can't say my country is sensible. Yeah.
Very good. So I think. No, the reality is, I don't think anybody in Africa, well, maybe there's a few countries, but most of us can't really say the government is doing anything realistically to help our lives in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not going to be the first one to say that. No, there are some initiatives, yes. Are they impactful? Unlikely, but hey, I'm not going to clap for the government for doing 1 or 2 initiatives. When it's an intensive something, when it's something that we can actually see, sure, I will be the first one to say this is what's going on. But until then, absolutely not. There is no significant keyword support from the government.
Thank you for that question, Daisy. So much more to be done. Prempe, go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm so excited about the questions we're asking, especially sponsorship or support from the government. Now, this is very interesting because in the early days of, let's say, independence, many African leaders actually financed actors. Yes. In the case of Nkrumah, there was a troupe. There was a performance group that was all over the continent demonstrating African creativity. And that was a time when there was that level of urgency to tell the African story. So Nkrumah was particularly interested in that. But it appears our understanding is taken to another level. Obviously, because at that time there was a need to mobilize people around the idea of a common culture to advance the development and progress of the continent. But it appears in contemporary times, the extent to which globalization has impacted even the contours of African development is such that we tend to rather want to see what others are doing, right? In terms of the policies they give us. So UN gives a policy, and everybody follows. UNC is
Exactly.
So because most of these international organizations or transnational organizations do not necessarily have a particular interest in the movie industry or cinema, they don't set the pace for many African leaders to say, okay, let's go that direction. So I think that for me is where one of the challenges that has bedeviled the industry.
Yes, but I would have to say I think that in itself is more indicative towards the kind of governments that we've had ever since the people who first started. I mean, look at Ghana, for instance. Ever since Nkrumah, we haven't built any proper universities, any infrastructure, no major highways, no major dams or ports, or by now we should have railways or whatnot. Those things used to happen back then because somebody would say, hey, listen, in 10 years, this is what I want us to do. And in 15 years, this is what I want us to do. Now we think in the next 3 years, what can I do? In the next 2 years, how much can I chop? So it's a shame because if you're absolutely right, if people were reasonable, they would realize that telling your stories is one of the most important things. And if the government really wanted to utilize what they had, they would invest and tell the stories from their point of view. How do you think America became America? America became America through the Hollywood machine that sold the story of the greatest country in the world. It wasn't my luck. When they shoot a film and the Air Force goes out and saves the whole world, and then they put the flag up there, and then the film ends in a shot of the American flag waving. That's not by luck. It's not coincidence. They're not doing it because it's fun. They're doing it because you get to tell a story that sells itself to the world. If Africa was telling its stories where we get to end our own shots in a particular way, people would think of us differently. But hey, I don't think our governments are very interested in those things. And until they are, I'm not going to sit here and complain about what they're not doing. We, in our own small capacity, will do what we can, and then we'll survive. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, can I come in again?
Of course.
So I totally agree with Mawuli in a sense that cinema or movie itself should be part of the governance system. You know, it should be one of the outlets of communication because it communicates. You see, and in many cases, research has shown that we learn more when we see than when we hear. You know, so if, for example, we could invest in the industry, definitely not just a narrative, but in terms of even our aspirations and visions as a people, you know, we will put out there, and that could be a rallying point for virtually all of us as young men and women to pursue a certain agenda. You see, that is relevant for the cause of the continent. And it's rather unfortunate that since Nkrumah established African Studies in 1962 to 1963, and then the School of Performing Arts, which also worked alongside with the Institute of African Studies, not much has been done, as you rightly pointed out. And yet, on a daily basis, you have applicants who go there to read performance, drama, and all that. So it appears we are not, like you rightly said, that Ghana and Africa, we have the talent, but it appears perhaps we are dying out of underutilization of the talent at our disposal. Possibly that is one of our sickness, and how it has negatively affected the movie or the cinema industry.
Very, 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 very good point, both of you. Mali, did you want to respond to that? If not, I'm going to go to Della. She also has a question.
Oh, I think obviously, like, so me and Charles are in agreement. So I support the stuff that he's saying. I think we should hear from Della if she has something to contribute.
Okay, go ahead, Della.
Hello. So I'm someone who is super interested in African stories, movies. And so when I was in America, I got super excited when I started seeing Nigerian movies, especially on Netflix, because that meant that I could still have a connection to my home. So it felt nice. Unfortunately, Netflix doesn't offer much, and it brings to the table the glaring problem that Africa as a continent lacks a worldwide platform that is comparable to Netflix, where we will showcase, our talent. I mean, when it comes to movies. And then the other problem, you hear a lot of your colleagues, including Africans, complaining about the quality of the movies that we put up. So, including like storyline, picture quality, when you look at it and then you compare it to Bollywood, not Hollywood, you yourself, you could see the difference. So right now, Mawuli, I'm thinking, what exactly is the problem? Is the problem lack of technology? Is the problem lack of money? Like we don't have the financial support? Or is the problem lack of talent? I know you said we have talent, but then do we have that level of talent that produces the kind of movies that our women leave their cooking in the evenings to go and watch? So that is my first question. And my second question, how do you think we can control this situation where, like, I'm Ghanaian, so even on Ghanaian televisions, you see that they almost all the stations, they show movies from other parts of the world. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but then it's so sad to see how the more we spend time promoting in other people's movies, our own continues to suffer. Because if TV3 prefers to show a movie from Asia in the evenings, how would a Ghanaian movie be appreciated to even generate the funds to create more movies, to also get to the level where they create those types of movies, right? So that's
Yes.
what I'm thinking about. And
Okay.
where do you think the future of African cinema is going? And what do we need to do to get there?
Okay. First of all, you're absolutely right. The content that we put out is not up to par. It's not where it should be. It's not where we would like it to be. Now, that being said, we're not the only ones. That being said, the majority of what comes out of Hollywood is largely bad. That's an industry problem. It's not unique to us. It's hard to get good stories to tell. It's hard to get filmmakers who are willing to make those good stories. And it's hard to have those two things and not have usually a studio that comes in with commercial interest, because at the end of the day, people want to make money from their films. So the question is, there's a producer who wants to make money. That's fine. Ghana has 2 cinemas, one on each side of the town. Now, this person wants to make some money, yes. In order to make a great film, he would need to spend, let's say, maybe $50,000 plus. You understand? It's not that he doesn't have that money. But now the question is, after he spends that 50,000, how do you want him to make that money back? Netflix isn't going to give him that money back. He has 2 cinemas in the whole of Ghana. And then there's TV3 and GH1 and the rest of them who cannot give him that kind of money. So now what does he do? He says, listen, I'm not going to spend 50,000 because I'm not going to make that money back. I'm going to spend 10,000 because I know I can make at least 15,000 from all the little things that I'm going to do, and I will make my money. Unfortunately, if you spend 10,000, that automatically means you can't hire the best locations, you can't spend more time editing, you can't do all those different things. So you come up with a story that might have been good if it had, say, $20,000 more. Who's going to give you that $20,000? Who's going to make that money back? The Hollywood just came out with a couple of films this year, with the new Wonder Woman Part 2, with a budget of $200 million. And it's been unanimously declared as a terrible film. It's a horrible film. It's nonsense. It's rubbish. You understand? They spent $200 million on it. So it's not about money at all, per se. Money necessarily doesn't necessarily always make a good film. The question is, you need people who are willing to take that risk. And at the moment, African producers don't have the reason to take that risk. What reason should they put themselves out there and make a story compelling for you? Because you people, you know, it's not like you will even pay the 50 cedi to go and watch the film. You understand what I'm saying? It's not like you will even, one person will use one Netflix account and share it with 10 of their friends. Where's he going to make that money from? So it's a rock and a hard place. We do want to tell the stories, yes. And at the moment, people are trying. But there's also that there's always going to be that gap, one. And two, like I said, the Hollywood industry is hundreds of years old, hundreds of years, which means they've been training for these things over and over again. They have things like CGI and visual effects, and they have more technical prowess and everything. Now you have people in Africa who are also trying. They're shooting more things. I'm sure you've noticed there's more CGI coming out of Africa. People are also, so in the next 10 years, yes, people will be able to do those things. But at the moment, it's a business. And unless you have a way for these people to make that money back, it's unfair to expect them to invest more than you're willing to offer them in return. How many of you actually go out and pay to watch African films in cinema? How many of you actually go out and pay? I know you say you like it and everything, but how many people actually go out and pay? The most we do is watch and say, well, ha, 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 the movie was no good, and there you go. Meanwhile, that's somebody's money. So for now, that's, like I said, there are people who are trying. And for me personally, that's all I can ask for. People who are continuing to push the envelope and say, hey, listen, we know that this is where we are now. We want to continue to try to make better film. We want to continue to try to make better things and hopefully make some more money back, which is what Nigeria is doing right now. They figured out a way to make good movies and make money off it, which is why things are going. Netflix came down and set up an office here because they realized that YouTube came down and set up an office here. Facebook wants to open an office here because they realized that, hey, listen, these guys have tapped into something. Now they're trying to do things properly and make money from it. A Nigerian musician, now Wizkid and Burna Boy and this, they will invest heavily into their marketing and everything because when they want to, they will go out and sell out the O2 Arena and perform for the whole world. It's always give and take and nothing comes in a vacuum. So for now, we need more people to support. We need people to actually take out their wallets and say, hey, listen, I'm going to pay for this and make it worthwhile for people to produce the movies that you say you want to see. And then hopefully we go from there. But I do completely agree. We're not where we want to be. We're not where we would like to be, but people are trying out there. So I feel like those people, we should at least try and support them.
Very wise. Thank you for that, Mawuli. We're just going to go to Kia. I think she had another question.
Yeah, so my question isn't extremely thought-provoking, but it's more about the social aspect of your work. So I stayed a bit with Debbie in Ghana, and she informed me that celebrity culture in some African countries isn't the same as the US. So I was wondering, have you found yourself having to like weed out people who want to be around you for your fame versus those who are genuinely want to be around you aside from your work? So like, how do you attempt to keep genuine people around you when you're well known?
I mean, Debbie will be the first one to tell you. Fortunately, I think growing up, we sort of had pretty tight-knit circles. So I don't think I've made new friends in a very long time. So personally, for me, I'm not really looking for new friends or companions. I don't really have that problem. But you are right. There's people who enjoy being in that space. It depends on the kind of celebrity that you want to be. There's people who enjoy being in the news and being controversial and doing this and that. So if it's something that you enjoy, then you live your life in a particular way. You don't mind being around people who might not necessarily be the best for you as long as they can give you some benefits. And if you don't like it, you choose the other way. So I have colleagues who will obviously be out surrounding themselves with whoever. Unfortunately for me, I don't really, how do I put it? I don't like people that much. So I'm at home most of the time. So I don't struggle too much with having people around me. But yeah, my personal story, that's just me. I don't think I can speak for the other celebrities. But yes, it is a problem out there, and people do face it.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Elizabeth, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and hi, Mawuli. I think that's how you say your name.
How's it going? No, perfect. You're perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So my name is Elizabeth, and I'm from France. I am originally from Congo, RC.
Okay.
And so ever since I've lived in the UK, so for almost 6 years, I've mostly heard about mostly Nigerian and Ghanaian actors and increasing success and prosperity of the Nollywood industry. So majority of the selection of African entertainment being broadcast on TV for time in France is predominantly Nollywoods. And even my parents, so they live in France, and they're in their late 60s. Even them are mostly watching a lot of Nollywood shows and they love it. So I just want you to help me just, if you could share a bit more about the Nollywood industry success, especially.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's incredible, the reach of, I would say, Nollywood, not just Nollywood, but African cinema. We assume, especially our generation, because how do I explain it? We thought we were the cool kids. So we're the kids who are above watching, say, the local African films, or like ha ha ha. But the reality is there is a huge demographic of people who are like enjoying it so much, including people like your 60-something-year-old parents who will come home every day and sit behind their TV and watch it unfailingly. I only got to experience it when I first moved to Nigeria, and I did my first proper TV series, and it was a daily show. So which meant I was on TV every single day, and you would go out and you would see the impact. I would have people who stopped their cars in the middle of the street to be like, "Oh my God, like I watch you every single day," and this person isn't even a street guy. This is a fancy doctor driving his Range Rover, and he stopped in the middle of the street to tell me that this and that. You get to see the impact of it, because it's starting to show that just because we haven't seen, or just because we don't watch those films and everything, it doesn't mean that people haven't been connecting to it. Somebody here mentioned earlier that she liked to see the Nollywood and the African films on Netflix because it made her have a connection to, I guess, home. We don't realize that, yes, the films may not be the best and everything, but there's a large group of people who this is doing a lot for, more than just the thing of having a nice film. For a lot of people, it's a way to connect to, I mean, their home, like you said. I don't know if your parents live in the UK or Congo or wherever.
No,
Sure.
So they live in France. Yeah.
Got you. Exactly. So you wouldn't understand the kind of impact that it has for them, just being able to sit down and watch that kind of thing, the importance of it to them. And at the moment, that is what Nollywood is doing right now. It's serving as a way for Africans all around to be able to say, hey, listen, I too am proud of what my people are doing. And you see it. You see some films on Netflix. Once again, not all the films, because not all of them are good. A lot of them are bad. That's the honest truth. But there's some films that you watch on Netflix that are African, and we all get to be like, yo, listen, I'm proud. Like I'm happy that I get to see this. So it's a hugely important time. Now is the time for all of us to drop the whole trying to be too cool and trying to be everything, and realize that, yes, these films might not be as fancy as Inception and Batman and the rest of them, and they may not have the silkiness or the mistakes or the perfection, but understand that it's a lot more important that you can ever think. So just give it the value that it I guess deserves. When you see an African person who there's somebody who tried to make a time travel film. It's called Day of Destiny, DOD. I think it should be on Netflix pretty soon. It's far from perfect, absolutely far from perfect. But just seeing that, I felt super proud, because it's sort of like a reimagination of Back to the Future. It's where some kids go back in time to try and like save their parents, like do some other stuff and everything. And the fact that people are brave enough to attempt these kinds of things, it's super fantastic. Absolutely, like, just great that we're actually saying that we too want to be in that space and everything. So yeah, the 60-year-olds are watching. I think they saw the future before us.
They did.
So
Yeah.
now it's up to us to also be like, hey, listen, you don't need to watch the whole thing, but at the very least, if you saw it, you can even just comment or like share it and congratulate the director and say, hey, well done, or this and that. When Jordan Peele did Get Out, Black people didn't support him because they had seen Get Out even, but they realized that, yo, this is someone who is of African origin, he's Black, and he took a huge step forward in trying to make a film that was different. And every one of us said, yo, listen, we're going to support you. We might not understand it. We might not think it's the best thing in the world, but what you have done right here, this is fantastic. And that's all that African people need us to do right now, to be able to, like, when they put their foot forward, even if it might not be the best, no one is saying hate it as the best film in the world. Absolutely not. But also just don't turn your face to the side and be like, oh, I'm too cool because I watch I don't know, Star Wars or whatever, because those aren't your people. So if you want to support them, that's absolutely fine. You can support them if you want to, but when you decide to support your own people, your people will still be here.
No, thank you so much for that. And it's really interesting what you said about some people, African, just being, not living in their home country, having to reconnect somehow with some of the shows that are being produced. I think this is just amazing. And even just to tell you, they are actually my parents telling me, hey, there's this new movie, you should watch it. I'm like, okay. So it's very interesting to see how, Nollywood's not only because you still get it in, Lagos mostly, and, broadcast almost everywhere. I think a lot of African kind of also relate to the movies or the stories, the narrative being shared and everything. And it's interesting to see also how, in a way, it's kind of connecting Africans among one another. So it's not only, Nigerians, South Africans, Ethiopians. What about the rest? Africa is so huge, so yeah. But thank you so much for that.
Thank you too.
This is really great. I'm loving the conversation. Alice, you had a question you wanted to bring in?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. Yeah, I'm actually enjoying the conversation as well. So my question is relating to language and authenticity. And I'm not going to I'll draw the link between Bollywood and the African movie and art industry. I watch a lot of Bollywood movies because of the sort of authenticity. So you'd realize that these movies speak to the realities of the Indian context, like the kind of scenes they produce. You'd realize if it's about poverty, scenes are showing real poverty of the Indian context. And most Bollywood movies would use their language and sort of use subtitles. And even if you don't understand the Indian language, you can still relate to it if you come from a background of poverty, if the sort of story of the movie relates to your experiences. And sometimes you'd watch African movies, and I'll go back to reflect on probably a very similar movie I've watched from the Indian context, and I would feel the authenticity of the Bollywood movies to the African movies. So Mawuli, how are you relating or sort of drawing in the African language and the authenticity of the African culture and experiences in the movies that are currently being produced?
Thanks for that. So quick one. I'm actually on set right now, and I think I'm going to be needed for a scene in a little bit. So I think I can do like probably two more, maybe one or two, but I might have to run away from you guys in a little bit. I need to get into makeup, but I will gladly answer this because it's a fantastic. It's a question that makes a lot of sense. However, we are the ones to blame. This is on no one else but us. And I would say us because I mean our generation, the people who were fortunate enough to be educated and fortunate enough, some of us, to go outside and everything. We didn't go outside and own our culture and be proud of it. The reality is 10 years ago, we weren't proud to use our African names. And when I was in uni, I wouldn't wear Ankara to class because most people will find it strange or whatnot. Now, because of Black Panther, everyone is singing Wakanda Forever and everyone wants to wear African colors and everything and say, hey, bro, you got to get me one of those. I'm like, my friend, come on for there. When you have told me this thing was nice in school. But now everyone's like messaging me saying, hey, bro, like I need one of these outfits, these African King outfits and everything. Now we're finding it cool. The reality is these Indians and the rest of them, they haven't been afraid to speak their culture from the top of their rooftops. They started this a while ago. So they would wear their own outfits, their indigenous outfits and everything, and shoot their films. We wanted to be like Jay-Z and wear baggy jeans and put plasters on our faces. So we spent a large part of our lives emulating other people's culture, only to come in 2020 to realize that our culture is actually the best. So now we're trying to make a move back into that kind of authenticity. Now people are trying to make films where it's now in the African languages and everything. Now they're moving back to that. But the reality is we weren't proud of it back then. So if people did a film that was completely in Chi, I guarantee you people would not have watched it back then. Guarantee you. Because that was the rhetoric. That was how we thought. That was how, even now, I mean, I don't know how many of you are Ghanaian, but if, say, 10 years ago, they said wear kaba and slit to a party, you would have been like, hell no. You want to wear, I don't know if back then you were wearing bandana top or strapped off, or one of those ones. You wanted to wear those ones, or the belts that J-Lo is wearing and whatnot. So that falls completely on us as a generation, to own that we didn't do well, but let's do better.
Yeah, so I look forward to watching a movie where you're speaking ever something proudly.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would be so happy to do that. So happy to do that.
Debbie, can I speak for the last?
In response, we have
yes, in response. Yes, in response. All right. So a bit of academics here. Pardon me for that, but
please.
This idea of cultural renaissance actually predated Black Panther, right? So it started more or less in contemporary times in the 1990s, all the way through to Thabo Mbeki's African Renaissance, which reverberated in many parts of the continent of Africa. And obviously, Black Panther itself fed into that kind of narrative, the need to recuperate African culture as part of the discourse on development. Now, having said that, the question of language, I'm happy Alice brought this up. Now, this has been a thorny issue among Africanists or African-oriented scholars. And the two individuals who became representative of that conversation were Achebe and Ngugi, right? So Achebe was saying English must be considered part of an African language and be used in ways that reflect how we use the language. And Ngugi, on the other hand, said, no, we don't need it at all. But the bridging gap was Ali Mazuri, right, who did a thorough analysis of how English itself is shaping the conscience, the thinking capacity of Africans. Now, for me, what I will advocate, maybe we'll go back to Achebe. I think I like Achebe, right? Now, and Achebe talks about Okonkwo, Things Fall Apart, where Okonkwo goes into exile and comes back, and he's still so much interested in going back to the past. We will agree. And Achebe shows that Okonkwo in the long run became anathema to the culture he presumed to be fighting for. So I think what we need to do is what I think most Nigerians are doing with their cinema. They use the language in ways that represent who they are. So they don't use jargons, they don't use cliches that many people will hardly understand, right? Sometimes when I watch our movies, especially some of our youngsters in Ghana, I hardly understand the kind of English they are using, not because I understand English, but because—
Makes sense.
Yeah, because for me, myself, it's like reading English novel, typical English novel, not the kind of Shakespeare, but typical English novel, and you hardly understand the context because the words are so unknown to you. Not that you don't understand English, but that's what I see most of people doing. All right, they try to mimic, and you are right, mimicking apism, trying to communicate in English as though they were Americans, as though they were British. But there's a way we could have non-native competence, even in the use of English language. So that for me is my point. You see, not necessarily using P, using Ga, using Ewe or Hausa, but even if we are using English for the sake of universal
accents,
universal appeal, for the sake of universal appeal, let's use the language in ways that reflect our culture, because language itself is a medium for the expression of culture. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, this is actually leaving me with a lot to think about, even for my dissertation. Of course, when we're looking at the arts as a whole, there a lot of issues come up across board. Guys, thank you. We're going to take our last question since Mawuli has to go. That's coming from Becky. Becky, would you like to unmute?
Hi, yeah, I was just wondering, what is the best way for us to support African cinema as a consumer? Like, is there a way for us to watch the movies that puts more money in the makers' pockets?
Got you. Thanks for that. I actually just realized that someone else had typed that in. I was just trying to respond to that, so I'm glad I can address that now. The only thing that we're asking for is if you shouldn't be afraid to interact with the content. You understand? So if you saw a thumbnail on, say, Netflix that's like an African thing, at the very least, play the trailer. See if you're gonna like it. Don't just assume. Most of us back, especially from back then, we would say, "Oh, I'm probably not gonna like this. It's probably gonna be another African. Oh, it's probably gonna be another story. It's probably gonna be." That's usually our first reaction, which means that we skip by people's work that might actually be kind of good. So I'm saying it's our obligation to, at the very least, give the people who have put their foot forward, at the very least, give them an audience. If you don't like it, that's fine, absolutely fine. And I completely agree that not all the content is very good, 1000%. But not all Hollywood films are good, but we watch them anyway. Michael Bay has been making terrible Transformers films. He's made like 5 of them. And me, myself, I go and watch every single one of them. I know they're bad films, but I watch them anyway. Why wouldn't I do that with African films? Most people will say, "Oh, I'm sure it's just an African story. I'm sure it's just a thing." So that's all that we can ask for, really. Like I said, there are people who are trying. So hopefully one of their projects will come across your screen one day. And when it does come across your screen, give it a chance. And and when you do, try to see the positives and not necessarily, because look at it with perspective. Don't just say, "Oh, ha, 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 it's not the best." And try to understand, why is it not the best? Maybe they're trying to tell a story about how somebody traveled from France to this to that. It's obviously going to be a pretty tough story to tell. So you can say, "Hey, I appreciated the fact that there was great music in the film. The story was shit, but this and that." And then we'll leave it there. If all of us can keep doing that, keep engaging with the content that people are putting out, at the very least, people won't be wasting their time. So now when a producer puts something out, people will click on it. People might pay to see it. They might not necessarily like it, but they will still pay to see it. That producer makes a bit of money, and the person says, "Okay, this is worthwhile for me. My next project, I want to tell a story about Kwame Nkrumah, about Thomas Sankara. I want to do this and that because now there's a bit of money in my pocket." Until we make it worthwhile for the people who actually invest in these things, it's impossible to continue to expect that, "Oh, why aren't the movies better? Or why aren't what have you done to try to make it better?" So yeah, that's pretty much the best way that we can all support. When it comes across your screen, engage in it and then decide for yourself if you like it or not.
I think that's an excellent point to end the conversation on. I think we've all learned a lot about the different reasons why the situation is the way it is. I think we've seen a lot of potential for change. And Mawuli, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time for leading this conversation. This was amazing, honestly. You've brought so much wisdom and illumination to this issue. So we just want to say thank you.
You're very welcome, baby.
And all the best with the movie that you're filming right now. We're definitely
Thank you.
checking
It's
it
called
out.
Ponzi, and I play a scammer, so I'm having a bit of fun with it. So
Nice. Okay, so we're gonna look out for that.
yeah, it should be on Netflix by the middle of the year, but it's gonna be in cinemas in a few months. So hopefully summer Netflix release.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, you guys can see Mawuli's movies on Netflix, on Iriko TV. Check them out. Check them out. Thank you so much, Mawuli, again.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone, and all the best to you. Thank you for engaging and for everything that you guys are doing. And until next time.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us for Africa Over Coffee. I hope that you'll be here for the next one. Please do subscribe to our Instagram. Look out on our Facebook for more events coming up this term. Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you.
Bye, Mawuli.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Debbie.
Bye, Grandpa.
Bye, everyone.
Very nice talking to you.
Nice talking to my brother. I wish you all the best. Keep soaring.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Catch you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Mawuli.
Bye. All right, I'm going to end it.
Well, yes.
Good night. Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.